So the Bento methodology is a concept that essentially reduces the amount of tasks you do, but prioritizes what ones you do. How can I maximize those heights, those natural energy spikes across a day for my own productivity? We're going to be doing more decision making and creativity, which burn the highest amount of energy when it comes to mental energy.
Yeah. I'm here today with the one and only Francesco D'Alessio from Toolfinder. Maybe before we get into Bento, how did you get into being such a reference in the productivity apps space?
Long story short, it was a strange one. When I was in school, probably around 14, 15, I would basically look at the teachers' software they were using for registers.
All right.
And then around about university time, when I was in my first year of university, I thought, why not take the risk and start a YouTube channel? Mm-hmm. And I originally started it talking about how you can be productive. And then I realized I matched the software and the productivity, and I started doing a few videos on a range of different tools, mm-hmm. and everything just sort of blew up from there, which was sort of 10 years later on.
All right,
now
all right.
I know too many softwares and too many tools.
Do you remember which one was the very first tool you ever reviewed?
I think it was some really not great calendar app.
Well, 12 years ago we weren't around.
Yeah, there you go.
So I bet it wasn't great.
Safe.
Is there any app that you remember when reviewing, maybe before you even start using, that really wowed you somehow?
First one that really took me back, whoa, this is mm-hmm. interesting, was when I actually first checked out Notion in 2017 when it first came on the scene, and they were targeting it as more of a wiki tool. And I opened it, I was like, I instantly went, this is not a wiki tool, this is a personal tool. Mm-hmm. And I really sort of tried to get that narrative over on YouTube. Mm-hmm, so it's sort of that was probably my wow moment for...
Yeah, makes sense.
Non-Morgan.
And just tapping into all of these different conversation you are having with the Toolfinder community, what do you reckon are, in these days, the biggest challenges for staying productive?
I think it's a little bit of navigating artificial intelligence in terms of what it can actually do to move your work forward. I think a lot of people don't understand at this point in time that it's probably going to be a very big ego shift, but 40% of their administrative work will be done for them by artificial intelligence. And that does leverage two core things, which is decisions and creativity. So I think the biggest challenge will be learning those two skills and adapting them when it comes to moving the needle with productivity.
That's very profound and something I absolutely relate to, both from the user perspective and from the product builder perspective. That is a very good look into the matter of how to integrate AI on products. Let's dive more into Bento. Here, could you just give a high-level introduction of what a Bento box is?
So the Bento methodology is a concept that essentially reduces the amount of tasks you do, but prioritizes what ones you do. And it does that through following the Japanese Bento box as an idea to copy. So what the Japanese Bento box does is organized in compartments of large, medium, and small. And the Bento boxes are typically prepared the night before as preparation for the next day. When we first came up with the idea, it was actually the app that we had an idea for first. So we started going, why can't we reduce the amount of tasks that we have and force people into thinking what they can do? So you can not only have 3 tasks, you can have 5 or 7. There's sort of a whole principles and system that can help you to improve the way you work.
Now, in this step, something I really resonate with, focusing on what you actually can do, right? Is really forcing you to enter the mindset of focusing on what really matters somehow, right? And that can, at the same time, that can realistically fit in your plans, which might not be limited only to the meetings or available time you have, but also really depend on your energy level. This is such an integral part of the Bento methodology, as I understood it at least. You even created a course around the Bento methodology, right?
Yeah.
And something that is very, very well crafted, something that I really appreciate, and if anybody's interested, I invite you to go check it out. It's something that I really appreciated in the course is this exercise of tracking your energy levels through the day, but also across different days of the week.
Yes.
Can you tell us more about that entire process and how important it is to have that introspective step to actually successfully implement your methodology?
Yeah, I think it's much more common for people to be a lot smarter about the way that they work. And I think that's only going to get more important as artificial intelligence comes into play, right? Because we're going to be doing more decision making and creativity, which burn the highest amount of energy when it comes to mental energy, right? So the concept of the energy graph and the energy flows in Bento was very much, how does your energy flow across a typical day? Like, for example, if I were to do drop off at school on Mondays, my peak energy for the day is about 10 o'clock, and then it peters off after lunch, but comes back at 3 o'clock. How can I maximize those heights, those natural energy spikes across a day for my own productivity? And that, combined with intentional task management and picking the right quality task to do, can have a profound impact on how you feel in terms of satisfaction. Because if you're doing quality tasks in high energy, if you're successful with those tasks because of the environment you're set up in, you will have better results. And the same goes with low energy tasks in a low intensity task in a low energy environment. It's like what people typically do sometimes is they go, I'm going to do a high energy one when I'm feeling lower energy. And sometimes if you're not that type of person and you haven't matched it to that, you can actually see that you will not complete the task and you feel more degraded, and it affects the tasks that are after and the knock-on effect.
I find this actually so interesting, really matching tasks to the energy levels.
Yes.
And circadian circles, being a late night owl or an early bird, all of these different things, right, are all things that I think are quite relatable to a certain extent.
Yes.
But something I found so interesting was really also trying to be aware of, maybe on a Monday, after a good relaxing weekend, I'm going to be generally more high energy than I am on a Thursday or a Friday.
Yes.
Right? So like what was a bit of a fresh take for me was really even tracking across weekdays. The other important aspect is sizing tasks right. I think it would be great if you could help our listeners or our users with any advice that you gathered through conversations with your community when it comes to sizing tasks.
What can be really clear is it takes a couple of weeks to fine-tune each of the large, medium and small tasks because it's different for everyone. And if you find yourself overreaching on a task, like, for example, you set something you believe is a medium task, and then it turns out you're spending 90 to 120 minutes on it, and you're feeling a bit flustered after, mentally taxed, then maybe it's worth bringing it into the large category. And vice versa with medium. If you see yourself flying through something, doing it in 20 minutes, and you feel pretty decent after it, and you haven't had your morning espresso, then it's probably that you need to bring that back to being a light task in terms of the system that's there. So I think it's all about like spending more time with it, and then after a few weeks, you'll know what the right things are. Some people make like a point where they can bring these tasks in, like a template, where they start ranking their own tasks as large, medium, small, and then they can drag these in instead of having to worry about what did I put that, and they can change them up a bit.
When you want to manage tasks, it's important to make tasks manageable. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into taskifying things.
Yes.
The steps, breaking down in more atomic pieces, right?
Yeah.
And yet again, in our line of business in software, sometimes it's harder to break down things down to 90 to 120 minutes chunks,
Yes.
right? So there are some tasks that feel like you can't just break down in smaller pieces.
Yes.
And how do you manage tasks that cannot be broken down into the recommended size, 90 to 120 minutes?
Yes. If there's, say, a task that's like a full day or 2 days, then it's probably worth breaking those tasks down into like parts. That's probably the best way you can do it, as long as there's an objective point at the end. But I think one of the best ways to still avoid burnout in these large tasks, because you can put like 2 large tasks a day or even 3 if you're feeling energetic. Implement things like the Pomodoro technique so that you can make sure that even those intense things are still planned and organized.
On the time blocking side of things, right? Yeah. I know you recommend planning ahead, right? And I love how you brought up the fact that the Bento box is something you prepared the day before.
Yeah.
So it really speaks to planning. How would you recommend people escape the awkward situation of having a plan be ruined by something that happens?
So for example, if you have half a day and then the second half of it goes out of the pan. The best thing to do when that happens is to bring those tasks back into your inbox. Because the thing is, this is about a selection and choice of tasks, not about not having tasks. It's not about not capturing tasks. Because I have loads of stuff on my to-do list, probably like yourself, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I still don't capture. I still
discharged.
capture that, right?
Yeah.
I still have a list of it all.
Yeah.
But I just don't drag it in to become an actionable thing because I don't want to overload myself. I just try to keep things mundane and routine in terms of planning ahead. The best thing I think people seen is actually looking at the week collectively. On a Friday, you could set your expectations a lot lower because your energy level's a lot lower. So maybe you start the week with 2 7s, 2 7 tasks in both of those days. But then when it comes to the Friday, put 3. And you can always extend that to 5. And then if you're feeling proper eager, 7. So if you're starting out the Bento method or you're looking to do it, even implementing 3 as a baseline and then increasing it can help on days that you think are best. But this is why it's so good because it's so flexible. Even for those people that work the evenings or the night or the morning, it can be adapted to whatever their likings are.
So you'd rather say, in order to start appreciating the practice, rather start a little easier, or being easier on yourself, especially when you know energy is going to be lower, and then keep adding to it, rather than just... We built into the AI planner recommendations more than one option to help people compensate for that over-optimistic approach of people underestimating the time things are going to take, right? So we build that into Morgen as well, and I love the recommendation. I think to make sure you can stick to it and learn how to use it.
That's why the smart frames are important in Morgen, because what they do is they give context to the task that's at hand. Like, for example, if you're organizing your day using the Bento method, obviously the context is a lot harder to weave in, even if you're using stuff. But with the context of, say, you've got a high-level Asana task that has a deadline of today, then that's going to fit well into the frame that you've set with those parameters. So that's why that sort of technology can be even more leveraging of the Bento system.
100%. And we really built frames to help people draw on their calendar their ideal ordinary week. I think was Ali Abdal that talked about the concept of an ideal ordinary week. But following your course, like really going through your course and seeing how tracking your energy levels can help you define your Mondays, Tuesdays to Fridays with following your different levels of energy. That is one I think extremely effective way to create your ideal ordinary week.
Yes.
And frames can really be, exactly as you highlighted, that canvas. You draw that and is not blocking any time, anywhere. It can have meetings and whatever crazy thing overlapping with those, but you still have a reference to go back to. And then with the suggestions the iPlanner generates for you and whatnot, you can also get the right recommendation based on due dates, the priorities and deadlines, as you mentioned. Before we wrap, Francesco, if you just want to conclude and tell anything to our user base, our community, if you want to share with them where they can find more about you and the Bento method.
Thank you very much for tuning in. I think one of the things that is really valuable with the Bento method is that you guys can apply it to Morgen, and it's a way for you to be a bit more intentional about what you do, because I think you'll notice a difference when you focus on quality tasks versus the quantity of them, because it will get you out of the rat race of focusing on everything versus something. So thank you very much for your support. Thank you all of the Morgen team and David for having me on. And you can find the Bento method at bentomethod.com. Thank you, David.
Thank you so much, Francesco. It was a pleasure having you.
Yeah.